The crash site. The desert was silent, except for the soft wind blowing over the rocks and sand. Jack Carter walked slowly, his boots crunching against the ground. He was tired. His repair mission was supposed to be simple: check old satellites, fix broken transmitters, and go home. But now he had picked up a strange signal. It was weak, but constant, and it was coming from the canyon ahead. Jack was a human engineer, not a soldier. He didn't like danger, but something about this signal pulled him in. It wasn't normal. The pattern was desperate. As he moved closer, he saw smoke rising in the distance. The rocks were sharp and uneven, but he kept going. When he finally reached the source, his eyes widened. A sleek, silver escape pod was half buried in the sand. It was alien, definitely not human design. One side was torn open, as if it had crashed hard. Sparks flew from broken wires. The symbol on the side was glowing faint blue. Illyrian Royal Mark. Jack's heart skipped a beat. The Illyrians were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. He had never seen one up close. And now, here was their tech, broken and burning in front of him. He stepped closer, slowly. "Hello," he called out. No answer. He climbed inside the pod, careful not to touch anything. The interior was dark, but glowing softly. Suddenly, he heard a soft voice. "Please, help me." Jack turned fast. In the corner, lying against the wall, was a woman. Her skin shimmered like silver. Her hair floated around her head like strands of light. She was clearly not human, but she was beautiful, and she looked terrified. Her chest was rising and falling fast. Her hand clutched a small device near her heart. Her eyes met Jack's. They were glowing blue and full of pain. "You must slide it in," she whispered, barely able to speak. Jack blinked. "What? Slide what in?" She pointed weakly to a broken container nearby. Inside, a glowing crystal hummed with energy. The same color as her eyes. Jack realized it was a power core. It must power her heart implant. He picked it up carefully. "If you don't, I die," she whispered, tears forming in her glowing eyes. Jack didn't hesitate. He knelt beside her and looked at the implant on her chest. A small panel was open, wires flickering. "I'm not a doctor," he said softly, "but I'll try." His hands moved fast. He had done hundreds of repairs, but never like this. He aligned the crystal with the socket. It clicked in, and the implant lit up. Her body jerked. A deep gasp escaped her lips. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the pod shook. A low growl echoed from outside. Jack froze. The woman's eyes shot open. "They're coming." "Who?" Jack asked. She grabbed his arm weakly. "The hunter. They sent it to kill survivors. It follows my energy signature." Jack swallowed hard. He looked outside. The sky was turning dark. Something was moving through the sand. Fast. It was big. "We have to go," he said. She tried to stand but fell. Jack caught her. "Can you walk?" "No, not yet. I need a few minutes." They were out of time. He looked around the broken pod, then at the glowing sky. He saw a narrow tunnel near the canyon wall. "I'm taking you there," he said. He picked her up gently. She was light, almost weightless. As he carried her out of the pod, he saw it, the hunter. It was massive. Black, four-legged, with glowing red eyes and sharp, jagged teeth. Its skin looked like armor, and it moved like a machine. It roared when it saw them. Jack ran. He didn't look back. The princess was breathing weakly in his arms. The tunnel was close. The beast charged. Just as the creature lunged, Jack dove into the narrow space. The hunter slammed into the rocks behind them, snarling in rage. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jack coughed, holding the alien princess close. She whispered, "Thank you." Jack looked at her. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't over." Outside, The beast howled again. Inside the tunnel, the only sound was their breathing, and the soft hum of the glowing crystal, now pulsing steadily in her chest. Hunted in the dark. The tunnel was cold and narrow. Jack Carter held his breath as he listened to the growl echoing from outside. The creature, the hunter, was sniffing the air. It couldn't fit into the tunnel, but it wasn't leaving either. It waited, like a beast that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Jack gently lowered the alien princess to the stone floor. She winced in pain but gave him a weak nod. The glowing crystal in her chest implant was pulsing slowly now. She was alive, but barely. For a few moments, they said nothing. Jack pulled a small flashlight from his utility belt and turned it on. The tunnel stretched forward into darkness. The walls were jagged and cracked, like the inside of an ancient mountain. It was old, maybe once a mine, long abandoned. "What is that thing?" Jack asked, keeping his voice low. Princess Sira opened her eyes. They were still glowing, but dimmer now. "It's called a Vornak beast," she said slowly. "My people created them during the war. They're meant to track and eliminate high-value targets. It doesn't stop, it doesn't sleep, and it will follow my signal until I am dead." Jack stared into the darkness. "You're saying we're being hunted by a machine that doesn't give up?" She nodded. "It was sent after me when I escaped." Jack exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "So what now? We just wait in here forever?" "No," she said, a little more strength returning to her voice. "We move. The creature can't fit through this tunnel, but it can wait for us at the other side. We need to find another way out, before it does." Jack helped her sit up. She was still weak, but stronger than before. He noticed something strange. Her skin glowed slightly in the dark, casting soft blue light on the tunnel walls. She wasn't just a royal. She was something more. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Jack tried to keep his thoughts clear. He was just a mechanic, a tech guy. He didn't sign up for this, saving a glowing alien princess from a death beast. This was straight out of a comic book. Yet, here he was, and somehow, he didn't want to run away. "Why were you alone?" Jack asked as they walked slowly through the darkness. "Why were you in that escape pod?" Princess Sira looked at him. Her voice was calm, but sad. "My ship was attacked by my own people. A secret group. They don't want peace. They want control. I carry something in my neural implant, information. Names, plans, locations. It could end the civil war. And only you have it." "Yes," she said. "And now, so do you." Jack stopped. "Wait, what?" "The moment you installed the crystal, your energy signature linked with mine. The data is now partially inside your biofield. That's why the beast can track you two now. It sees both of us as one." Jack laughed nervously. "So let me get this straight. A monster is hunting us. Your people want you dead, and now I'm part of the target." She nodded softly. "Great," he muttered. They reached a split in the tunnel. One path went downward, deeper into the rock. The other curved upward and smelled of fresh air. Jack was about to choose the upward path when Sira suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Listen." Jack held still. In the silence, he heard something. Drip, drip, drip. And then, click, click, click. His eyes widened. "What is that?" Her voice trembled. "Another Vornak. A smaller one. A scout." Suddenly, the tunnel above echoed with fast, metallic footsteps. Jack grabbed her hand. "We go down." They ran into the lower tunnel. The air grew colder. Water dripped from the ceiling. Ahead, the path opened into a hidden cave, a natural cavern with glowing crystals lining the walls. It was strangely beautiful. They ducked behind a boulder just as the scout passed by, its red eyes tanning the tunnel. It paused, then moved on. Jack and Sira waited in silence. She leaned close and whispered, "We won't survive long without help." "Is there anyone you trust?" Jack asked. She hesitated. "Yes, an old scientist. He built the implants. He lives in the shadow zone, but it's far, days away." "Then we better start moving," Jack said. Before they could stand, a sound came from the cave entrance. Another Vornek. But this one was different. It didn't move like a hunter. It moved like it was searching for something. Someone. Its armor was silver, its eyes blue. Sira gasped. "That's not a Vornek. That's a guardian. It's one of my people." Jack looked at her. "Is it safe?" She nodded. "If he survived, he's loyal." Jack stood and raised his hands. The guardian paused. Then it stepped forward, scanning both of them. "Princess Sira." It spoke in a deep mechanical voice. "You live." She stepped forward, swaying slightly. "We need your help." The guardian looked at Jack. "And the human?" "He saved me," she said firmly. The guardian bowed slightly. "Then he is under my protection." As the three of them began to move through the cave, Jack realized something important. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that could change everything. Fire and ice. The journey through the caverns was slow and silent. Jack Carter walked beside Princess Sira while the guardian led the way, its heavy silver feet echoing on the smooth stone. The alien robot's glowing blue eyes lit the narrow tunnel ahead like a flashlight, but Jack's mind was stuck somewhere else. Everything was changing too fast. 2 days ago, he was fixing broken antennae on a forgotten outpost. Now he was being hunted by a death beast, protecting an alien princess with living circuits in her chest, and carrying half a galaxy-shaking secret in his biofield. The worst part, he wasn't even sure he wanted to go back to his old life. Sira glanced at him as they walked. "You're very quiet." Jack shrugged, trying to process all this. She smiled gently. "You're doing better than most humans would." Jack gave a half-smile, but inside, his thoughts were loud. What would happen if they failed? If the data inside them was lost? Would both their species be dragged into war again? They soon arrived at a larger chamber, an open underground hall lit by glowing white roots that crawled across the ceiling. A natural spring bubbled in one corner. Strange plants grew around the edges, shining with faint light. The guardian turned. "We rest here for the night." Jack lowered his gear and sat down on a flat rock. Sira knelt near the spring and dipped her fingers into the water. Her body shimmered as it absorbed the moisture, like her skin drank energy instead of just water. Jack watched in quiet awe. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly, nodding toward the implant on her chest. Sira paused. "Sometimes. The energy keeps me alive, but my body is changing." "Changing how?" She looked at him carefully, as if choosing her words. "The bond we created. It wasn't just power. Our signals merge. I'm becoming more like you, emotionally." Jack frowned. "Is that bad?" "No," she said quietly. "It's unfamiliar. Illyrians aren't built for deep emotions. At least not like humans. We were designed to control, calculate, dominate. But now, I feel things I never did before." She touched her chest. Fear, hope, connection. Jack's heart skipped slightly. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Before the silence grew awkward, the guardian spoke. "We must move before sunrise. The main exit is blocked by ice traps. That sector was designed for defense during the war. We'll need heat or fire." Jack stood up. "Fire, I can work with that." He dug into his gear and pulled out an old plasma torch. It was low on fuel, but enough for one solid burst. The guardian led them down another tunnel. This one was colder. Frost clung to the walls. Their breath became visible. Soon, they reached a vast underground chamber, its entrance covered in solid blue ice. Inside, a control panel flickered under the frost, half buried in ancient snow. Beyond the wall of ice, another path glowed faintly, leading upward. "That's the way out," Syrah said. Jack nodded. "Let me try." He approached the ice wall and flicked on the torch. Blue flame roared to life. Carefully, he pressed it against the frozen surface. The ice hissed and steamed. Bit by bit, it began to melt. Suddenly, a low humming noise echoed through the chamber. Syrah stiffened. "Something's wrong." The Guardian's voice became sharp. "We're not alone." From the shadows behind them, a figure appeared. It was tall, armored, and familiar. A second Guardian, but its eyes glowed red. "Princess Syrah," it said in a cold, mechanical tone. "You are to be terminated." The friendly Guardian stepped forward. "You are corrupted." The red-eyed one raised its arm. A plasma blade lit up with a hiss. Jack stepped in front of Syrah without thinking. "Get back," he told her. "Both of you, I'll hold him." "You can't fight that," the Guardian warned. "I can slow it down," Jack replied, gripping a flare from his belt. "And I'm very good at causing distractions." He activated the flare and threw it into the air. As it burst into bright, blinding light, the corrupted Guardian lunged. Jack dodged left, barely missing the swing. The blade sliced into the wall, spraying sparks. The good Guardian charged forward, colliding with the enemy in a crash of metal on metal. Syrah screamed, "Jack, the ice." He turned, torch still in hand. The flame was dying, but he pressed it one last time to the ice wall. A massive crack shot through the frozen barrier. With a final kick, the wall shattered. Light poured through. "Go," Jack yelled. Syrah ran through the opening, followed by Jack. Behind them, the two machines clashed, metal fists pounding like thunder. The sound faded as they climbed upward, into a narrow shaft that led to the surface. Cold air turned warm. The sky above was turning purple. A new dawn. As they reached the top, Jack collapsed, breathing hard. Syrah knelt beside him. "You saved us again." Jack gave a tired smile. "Getting good at it." She placed her hand over his. "Jack, we're not just running anymore." He looked at her. "No." She shook her head. "We fight now." The false rescue. Morning came like a slow breath over the frozen hills. Jack Carter sat on a broken rock, staring at the horizon. The sun looked different on this part of the planet. Brighter, more golden, like fire gently pouring over a frozen world. He wiped sweat and ash from his face, thinking about everything they'd just survived. They were alive. But for how long? Princess Syrah sat nearby, legs folded beneath her, eyes closed. Her chest implant hummed softly, glowing in rhythm with her slow, steady breathing. She was meditating, something Jack had seen her do when she needed to calm her mind or recover her strength. It made her seem peaceful, like a star wrapped in silence. Jack watched her for a while, then stood up and walked a few feet away, letting the wind hit his face. He hadn't slept. His mind wouldn't let him. They had escaped the corrupted Guardian, but barely. Their own protector had sacrificed himself to hold it back. Jack didn't even know if it had survived. And now, they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. No food, no signal, no hope. He reached for his communicator, more out of habit than belief. The screen blinked weakly. Low battery. But then, a blip. Jack frowned. He tapped the screen again. A new signal. It wasn't from the planet. It was coming from orbit. He ran back to Syrah. "Wake up." She opened her eyes slowly. "There's a ship," Jack said. "Someone's here." Syrah stood, instantly alert. "Can you trace it?" "Already did. They're landing. Maybe a few miles from here." Syrah's expression was unreadable. Too fast. It could be a trap. Or a chance. She looked at him. "We have no allies left." Jack hesitated. "Then we make new ones." They reached the landing site by midday. A sleek black shuttle had touched down in a clearing surrounded by crystal trees. The design was clean, quiet, Illyrian technology. The door slid open, and 3 figures stepped out. 2 wore armor. The third wore white robes with silver patterns. A woman, tall, with long white hair and dark silver eyes. Syrah froze. "High Counselor Varela," she whispered. "She was once my mother's closest friend." Jack whispered, "That's good, right?" "I don't know," Syrah replied. "She was never a fighter, but she believed in the old ways." The counselor stepped forward, raising her hands peacefully. "Syrah, you're alive. Praise the stars." Syrah nodded slowly. "How did you find me?" Varela smiled gently. "We've been watching. Not all of us agree with what's happening in the Empire. When you escaped, we hoped you would survive. And now, here you are." She looked at Jack. "And this is the human, the one who helped you." Jack raised a cautious hand. "Hi." Varela chuckled. "He looks surprisingly ordinary." Syrah stepped in front of Jack protectively. "He's not ordinary. He's the reason I'm still alive." Varela nodded. "Then he is welcome." The soldiers behind her said nothing, but Jack noticed their eyes. Too sharp, too watchful. Still, they were out of options. They followed Varela onto the ship. The interior was luxurious. Soft lights, warm air, calming music. A table was set with food and water. Jack hadn't eaten in a day, but something inside him felt uneasy. He leaned toward Syrah and whispered, "Too perfect." "I know," she whispered back. As they ate, Varela asked questions, gentle, polite ones. "How far did you get? Is the data stable? Do you remember the access phrase?" Syrah answered carefully. But Jack noticed something. One of the guards whispered into his earpiece. Then, a door locked. Syrah noticed too. Her body tensed. Varela stood. "You've done well, Syrah. Better than we expected. But I'm afraid your usefulness ends here." Jack stood instantly. "What the hell is this?" Varela's smile faded. "The Empire must remain strong. Chaos is dangerous. Secrets are dangerous. If the galaxy knew the truth, if your little data leak reached the wrong hands." She turned to the guards. "Take the human first. His signal carries part of the code. Extract it. Then terminate." The soldiers raised their weapons. Jack grabbed Sarah's hand. "Run." But there was nowhere to go. The walls closed around them. Jack reached for his belt, but his tools were gone, confiscated at the door. Syrah stepped forward, her implant glowing brighter. "You don't understand what's inside me," she said coldly. "You don't understand what you're risking." Varela raised an eyebrow. "Try me." Suddenly, boom! The wall exploded. Smoke poured in. Figures rushed through. Rebels, wearing brown armor and red visors. One of them pulled off his helmet. It was the Guardian, but not the one from before. A new one. Upgraded. "Princess," it said in a deep voice, "you summoned us." Syrah looked shocked. I didn't." Jack pointed at his wrist. The communicator blinked. Syrah smiled. "He did." The Guardian raised its arm. A pulse cannon lit up. Varela's soldiers fired back. Jack grabbed a shield from the floor and pulled Syrah down. Plasma bolts flew through the air. The rebels pushed forward, overpowering the guards. Varela fled into the corridor. Jack looked at Syrah. "You okay?" She nodded, eyes burning. "I'm done running." He helped her to her feet. "Then let's chase her." The memory lock. Silence fell after the battle. The rebel soldiers moved quickly, securing the corridors, checking the fallen for survivors. The once luxurious ship now smelled of smoke, plasma, and something darker, betrayal. Jack Carter sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. He'd seen explosions before, been near danger, but this was something else. These weren't just weapons. These were secrets wrapped in war and lies, and he was in the center of it all. Across from him, Princess Sira stood in a trance. Her implant flickered. Her eyes dimmed, then flashed. "Jack," she whispered. "Something's wrong." He stood up immediately. "What is it?" Her voice was distant. "My mind. It's locking itself. The data is trying to bury itself inside me." She stumbled forward, grabbing his arm. Jack caught her just in time. The Guardian stepped closer. "The memory lock is activating. It's a fail-safe. If her mind senses danger or betrayal, it seals the data behind layers of memory encryption." Sarah looked at Jack, her breath shallow. "There's only one way to stop it." Jack's eyes widened. "Tell me." "We have to enter the link. Together. You have half the key. I have the other. If we don't do it now, the information will be lost. Enter the link. Into your mind." "Yes," she whispered. "But once we're inside, we'll see everything. My past. My pain. My choices. All of it." Jack hesitated for a second, then nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." Inside the mindscape, they sat across from each other in a small medical chamber deep inside the rebel ship. A neural link device hovered between them, a glass sphere with soft blue lights, humming quietly. The Guardian stood beside them. "You must sync your thoughts. The link will draw on emotion, memory, and trust. If you doubt each other, the link will fail." Jack reached forward and took Syra's hand. "I trust you," he said. She squeezed back. "Then close your eyes." The device lit up, and the world disappeared. Jack opened his eyes to light. Not normal light. Memory light. He stood in a golden field, the sky above a soft violet. Towers floated in the distance, spinning gently in the clouds. Birds with crystal wings soared above. He turned and saw her. Syra, but younger, barefoot, laughing. He stepped toward her. Suddenly, the memory changed. The field turned dark. The towers burned. Syra screamed. Jack saw soldiers, Illyrian elites. They dragged her through the streets. Her parents, both royal, fought back, but were overwhelmed. He felt Syra's emotions like a wave of fire, fear, confusion, heartbreak. This was her past, not a story, not data. A wound. A voice echoed from the sky. "Emotion is weakness." Another voice, hers, replied, "Then I am weak." Jack followed the memories as they shifted again. Now he stood in a lab. Syra lay on a table. Her body shook. Wires connected to her spine and chest. Alien scientists implanted the device near her heart. "Project Oracle," one of them said. "The perfect living data vault." Jack's stomach turned. Syra had been turned into a storage device, not by enemies, but her own people. A child of royalty, reprogrammed to become a weapon of silence. He looked at the version of her lying on the table and felt something inside him shift. She didn't deserve this. She didn't choose this. Now, the memory twisted again. He found himself in darkness. In front of him, a door. Silver, glowing, locked. Syra stood beside him, older again, stronger. "This is it. The data vault. How do we open it?" She looked into his eyes. "You have to feel what I feel. Understand me. Not just through facts. Through connection." Jack closed his eyes. He thought of her pain, her fight, her courage, her voice when she asked him to slide it in. Desperate, but trusting. Her fear, her strength, and her choice to let him in. He opened his eyes. The door opened. Inside, it wasn't files. It was a vision. A massive battle station, half-built, hiding in the shadow of a gas giant. It had no weapons. Instead, it had frequency beacons designed to erase memory across entire planets. A mind-wipe device. Silent, invisible, devastating. It would be the Empire's final weapon. Forget resistance. Just make people forget. The plan was in motion. testing would begin in days. Jack gasped. He looked at Syrah. This is what they're hiding. She nodded, tears in her eyes. And this is what we must stop. The memory collapsed. The world folded in on itself. They awoke with a gasp. Back in reality. Jack ripped the neural wires from his arms. Syrah did the same. They looked at each other, breathing hard. The Guardian stepped forward. The sync was successful. The data is unlocked. Jack stood. Then we send it out. To everyone. Galaxy-wide. The Guardian hesitated. It won't be easy. They will come for us. Jack smiled darkly. Let them. Syrah stood tall, her implant glowing brighter than ever. They turned me into a vault, she said, voice steady. But now, I'm going to be a weapon of truth. Jack looked at her with pride. Let's finish this. The human gambit. The rebel base was hidden deep inside a shattered moon. The surface above was cracked like glass, its air long gone, its soil turned to jagged crystal. But far beneath, hidden in the labyrinth of tunnels, life pulsed with resistance. Jack Carter stood in a dark chamber surrounded by alien consoles and holographic screens. Princess Syrah stood beside him, her silver skin glowing faintly beneath the dim lights. Her implant now pulsed with steady energy, fully recharged from the memory unlock. A circular platform rose in the center of the room. It was ancient Illyrian tech, a core beacon, built to send data bursts across the stars, one of the last of its kind. If they could upload the memory vault, every corner of the galaxy would know the truth. But there was one problem. It's not stable, said the rebel technician, a nervous-looking insectoid named Krell. The core beacon's power cell is damaged. We can't complete a full upload. Jack frowned. How much can we send? Maybe a quarter of the file. Then the relay will fry. That's not enough, Syrah said, voice sharp. We need to broadcast everything. The battle station, the mind-wipe plan, the names. There's another way, said the Guardian, stepping forward. A direct link. A living transmitter. Everyone turned toward him. The human's biofield carries the second half of the encryption key. If he links directly to the core beacon, it may work. His body will act as a bridge, a signal amplifier. Jack narrowed his eyes. But there's a catch. Yes, the Guardian said. It could kill you. Silence filled the room. Syrah stepped closer. No, there has to be another way. Jack looked at her, calm. If this is what it takes, I'll do it. Jack, I'm not just here because I stumbled into a crash site, he said softly. I'm here because you trusted me. You let me in. I've seen what you've been through. I've seen the weapon. If I walk away now, that's on me. She reached for his hand. You don't have to die to prove anything. I'm not trying to prove anything, he said, gently brushing his thumb across her knuckles. I'm trying to finish this. Their eyes locked, human and alien. Two souls from different worlds, now completely connected. I won't let you go alone, she whispered. Jack smiled faintly. I'm not alone. The link begins. Jack stood on the platform, heart racing. Silver cuffs locked onto his wrists and ankles, holding him in place. The beacon's arms moved slowly around him, drawing energy from the crystal core. Sparks crackled in the air. Holographic symbols swirled above his head. Syrah placed her palm on the core interface. Her implant pulsed in sync with the beacon. The Guardian activated the final sequence, and the light exploded. Pain shot through Jack's body, not burning, but freezing, like ice and fire crashing together inside his blood. His thoughts became static, his vision full of code and color and chaos. He could hear her. Syrah's voice, inside his mind. Don't let go, Jack. Stay with me. He gritted his teeth. The data moved through him like a river of light. He saw it all again. The battles, the betrayals, the silent weapon drifting above the gas giant. each piece of truth flowing through his body like a transmission line. Then, the power surge. The core beacon began to shake. Sparks flew from the walls. Systems overloading. Krell shouted, "We're losing it." Syrah cried out, her knees hitting the floor. Her implant flickered violently. "He's burning out." Someone screamed. The Guardian stepped forward, but Syrah raised a hand. "No, he can finish this." Inside the storm of energy, Jack saw memories, not his own. Hers. He saw her standing at her mother's grave. He saw her alone in the throne room, whispering to the stars. He saw her first smile after meeting him. "Jack," her voice called. "Come back." He reached out through the link, his mind trembling, and touched hers. The core beacon exploded with light. A blast of data shot through the galaxy. Every rebel station, every hidden network, every neutral system. The truth flew like fire across the stars. The data had been sent, but Jack collapsed. Aftermath. The silence was terrifying. Syrah knelt beside him, her hands shaking. His body was still. No breath, no movement. She leaned down, placing her head against his chest. Nothing. Tears welled in her eyes. "No, no, please." She placed both hands over his heart. Her implant flared. Blue light poured into him. "Take it," she whispered. "Take my pulse. Take my energy. Just don't leave." The light grew brighter. And then, a breath. Jack gasped, coughing hard. His eyes fluttered open. Syrah sobbed in relief, pulling him close. "You idiot," she whispered. "You weren't allowed to die." Jack smiled weakly. "Told you I wasn't alone." She pressed her forehead to his. "You're more than human," she whispered. "You're hope." Elsewhere in the galaxy, admirals panicked. Politicians argued. Screens across 100 worlds now showed the truth. The mind-wipe weapon, the betrayal, the planned erasure of history itself. Sparks of rebellion lit across space, and in the shadow of the gas giant, the weapon station began to retreat. But it was too late. The galaxy had awakened, and a human named Jack Carter had become its spark. The rise of two worlds. The stars were different now. They didn't feel cold, or distant, or unreachable. They felt alive. Jack Carter stood in a glass dome above the Rebel Command Center, watching the stars shift gently across the sky. The silence felt different too, less like emptiness, and more like possibility. It had been 4 days since the data burst shook the galaxy. 4 days since Jack linked with the core beacon and nearly died. 4 days since the world discovered the truth. Now, nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy reacts. On distant moons and crowded planets, people gathered in silence to watch the footage. The mind-white station, drifting near a gas giant. The stolen voices of citizens who had already been erased. The faces of empire leaders who had planned to silence an entire generation. Everything was out in the open. Some screamed in rage. Some cried in relief. Some simply watched, quiet, wide-eyed, as the web of lies burned to ash. The Empire's elite tried to deny it, but it was too late. Their ships were already being grounded, their supporters turning away. The weapons station vanished into hiding, but its silence was now a loud confession. Across hundreds of systems, rebellions bloomed like firelight in the dark. Cyrus' choice. Inside the rebel chamber, Princess Syrah sat before a large circle of alien leaders, rebels, scholars, generals, and even former nobles who had once feared her name. They all waited for her answer. Would she return to the throne? Would she lead the empire back to order? Would she rebuild what was broken? She looked at them with calm eyes. "No," she said. Gasps echoed around the room. Syrah stood slowly. Her silver skin shimmered with a soft blue pulse from the implant in her chest. "I don't want to rule," she said. "I want to rebuild, not as a queen, but as a voice, a guide, a bridge between two worlds." The room fell silent. Then someone clapped. Then more. Soon, the chamber echoed with applause. Sarah turned and left the room. Her path was no longer royal. It was personal. And shared. Jack's awakening. Jack woke up in the med bay, surrounded by soft lights, quiet beeping, and the soft hum of healing machines. His muscles ached. His chest still felt like lightning had passed through it. But he was alive. He blinked. Sarah sat beside him. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" he croaked. She smiled softly. "No, you're still stuck with me." He grinned weakly. "Good." She touched his hand gently. "They're calling you the human signal. Sounds cooler than Jack." She laughed quietly. "They're scared of you." "Of me?" She nodded. "You did what no one else could. You bridged species, memories, hearts. You're proof that humanity isn't just dangerous. It's powerful because it feels." Jack turned his head. "What about you?" "I said no to the crown." Jack blinked. "Seriously?" She shrugged. "A throne doesn't fix a broken galaxy. People do." Jack looked at her for a long moment. "You changed," he said. She looked back. "You changed me." Their fingers intertwined. Different shapes, different origins, but one rhythm. One last mission. In the days that followed, Jack and Sarah visited liberated systems. Together, on a small desert moon, they spoke to orphans who remembered nothing of their parents until the transmission helped them remember their names. On a water-covered planet, Jack helped repair shattered memory banks holding ancient languages. On a silent asteroid once used for testing the memory wipe, Sarah wept and planted a stone marked with the words, "We remember." Word spread quickly, not just of a war, but of a partnership, a human and an alien princess, a bond stronger than any empire. A new dawn. One cycle later, Sarah and Jack returned to the place where they first met, the crash site. The wreckage was still there, buried in sand and time. The pod was cracked open, its lights long dead. Jack stepped forward and touched the edge. "I thought you were dying in there," he said. "I was," she replied. "But you were still glowing," he smiled. "Still fighting." Sarah looked at him. "And you were just a man in the right place." He turned toward her. "No, I was the right man in the place I didn't know I belonged, until I met you." They stood there, in the golden light, wind whispering across the rocks. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned in and kissed him. Not rushed, not dramatic, just real. Warm, soft, honest. When they pulled apart, Jack chuckled. "So, what now?" Sarah looked at the sky. "Now, we build, we teach, we heal. And us." She looked into his eyes. "We stay, we grow. Together." Jack took a deep breath. Somewhere far above, stars blinked like quiet blessings. The galaxy had feared human emotion, but now it had been saved by it.